Good afternoon and welcome to our OBS Online Bible Study. This is now our 20th session. Isipin mo yun, naka-20 na po tayo. And we are now in the 4th Gospel. And we are studying the Gospel of John. I would like to thank you, or to thank everyone who have been sharing our videos and been using it in teaching others. I really appreciate for those who have allowed me to post this and allowed it being shared in their own Facebook pages. So nagpapasalamat po ako ng malaki para sa mga kapatid at para sa mga individuals that is posting it and sharing it in their OPs. So patuloy po tayo, and let me just remind you that our past lessons are available in YouTube. Since sometimes our internet connections are having some problems, if you could please just subscribe with Cynthia so that I don't have to send it to you every video after every broadcasts, and that we just could be ministry partners. And this one, hindi natin sukat akalain that God will be blessing this online Bible study, and it is being used for the glory of God. At marami sa mga kapatid natin, as much as I could, susubukan kong mag-Taglish, and I'm so sorry for those of who cannot understand Tagalog, but please bear with us so that we could both attend to our local brethren and to our foreigners, to our brethren in some other places. Much that I would like to speak also in Tagalog, Ilocano, and Cebuano and present lessons in those dialects. But let us just stay for now with this. Okay? So keep sharing, and thank you for posting again. Free po na i-share ito. Wala pa pong anumang mga bayad o anumang mga bagay-bagay. And thank you so much. We're using Balong's iPhone this time, so hopefully everything could carry me through 30 minutes. Okay? So no further ado, let us start. As we study John, let us always remember that John has his central theme. He would like to present to us the true nature of Jesus Christ. What is the true nature of Jesus Christ? And we have taken that Jesus is fully human because he argues that the Word became flesh. At ang verbo ay naging salita. At ang verbo ay nagkatawang tao. I should say that. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And the second one na gusto ipakita ni John is that the true nature of Jesus is that he is also fully divine. So, human, divine, kakaiba yon. And that is the approach of John. Fully divine in that he argues that in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Hindi siya become, kundi was. Just like God from the very beginning. He is coexisted with God. Kaya yung word na yun, nung magkatawang tao, natural tawagin mo siyang tao. Nung kalagayang Diyos, natural kalagayang Diyos yon. So, that is the argumentation of John, and that is very, very peculiar in the book of John. Let us not also forget the purpose of the book of John. John was very emphatic in saying that there are so many other signs truly the Jesus in the presence of his disciples which are not written in this book, in the book of John, hindi in the Bible. In this book, when he says in this book, he means in this gospel, in his book of John. But these are written, anumang naisulat ni John na mga bagay-bagay were written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing ye might have life through his name. That is the purpose of the book. Having life believing in Jesus and having life in His name. See, everything that John will write, he confronts us, we being the readers, we, ikaw at ako, being the one that will evaluate either to accept or reject anumang sinabi ni John, anumang ilalabas ni John. Will you accept him as fully human or reject it? Or will you accept him as fully divine or reject it? Yan ang isang bagay. John confronts his readers on that. Now we have taken that, and now let's go on the second part. If you have your Bibles with you, let's open in John chapter 2. And we're starting from verse 13 down, okay? Let's read this first, and then we move on and try to explain these things. And what are the claims of John in presenting this? I just can't let go of this. Kailangan mapag-usapan natin itong clearing of the temple. So let's start. The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Mayroong tatlong festivities na kailangan puntahan ng mga Hudyo sa Jerusalem. They are to attend this, at least one of these three feasts. One is the Paschal, dito, yung Passover. The second is yung Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks. And then, yung Feast of Tents o Tabernacle Feasts. Tatlo yan ng mga feast. So this one is the Passover feasts. So let's talk about that. The Passover commemorates the death angel passing over every house that has a blood on the doorposts. Yan ang maalala natin back in the time of Egyptian bondage. So, verse 14, in the temple, I highlighted that. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons and the money changers sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold pigeons, take these things away, do not make my Father's house a house of trade. Interesting. The clearing of the temple for synoptic writers, they put it in the Passion Week. Ito yung last week of Jesus. But with John, John was just starting, and then he immediately put this. After changing water into wine, after showing us the first miracle that Jesus did in front of his disciples, from a very simple, insignificant thing like water for ceremonial cleansing, he used it into something alive and useful. Turned it into wine, and his disciples believed in him. Isa yan sa kaparaanan ni Juan, paano ang isang bagay na payak, walang importansya, walang kahalagahan, walang kabuluhan, bibigyang buhay. At yan ang isa sa mga paraan ni Juan ng pagtuturo o paraan ni Juan ng pagsusulat. At matcha-challenge nga naman yung magbabasa. Now, the cleansing or the clearing of the temple ay ganun din. Either may dalawang clearing of the temple. Some argue na iisa lang ang clearing of the temple. And that happened during the last week of Jesus, during the Passion Week. But others argue na mayroong dalawang clearing of the temple. And ang kanilang, the argument being is that the wordings are not the same. And that how Jesus acted are not the same. From the presentation of John and from the presentation of the Synoptic Gospels or writers. Be that as it may. So if there be two clearing of the temple, then this for John is in his early ministry, and those of the three other writers, the Synoptic Gospels, are during the Passion Week, the last week of Jesus' life on earth. The claims of Jesus, hindi nagbabago yun. Yung claim ni Jesus, this is my Father's house, or my house. Let's move on to that. Okay? This is now the third temple. Okay, the temple being mentioned in chapter 2 verse 13 is the third temple. Ang tawag natin doon is, this is the Herod's temple or Herod's temple. The first temple was built by Solomon. So we call that the Solomon temple. It was destroyed in 586 by the Babylonians. Then came Zerubbabel's temple. After the Babylonian captivity, when the captives, when those who were transported to Babylon came back, they built Zerubbabel's temple. And that temple got destroyed, and now we have Herod, an Idumean, to win the hearts of the Jews, because he knows he is not a Jew, built this elaborate temple. That reminds us that the Jews take pride so much on this temple, because the Shekinah of God, or the presence of God, the glory of God, they all think that the temple is God's dwelling place. God stays there. Reminds us of the tabernacle during the when they were moving out, during the Exodus, when they were coming out of Egypt and wander through the desert of Sinai, going to the promised land, wherein the presence of God can be seen through a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And that pillar, that Shekinah, that presence, always stays at the tabernacle. And noong gawing temple, yung tabernacle was converted into tent, converted into the temple, the Shekinah of God dwells there also. There it is. Okay. But the thing is, supposedly, the temple should be a house of prayer. But it turned out to be den of thieves. For John, he used it as trade. Okay? Father's house, and then house of trade. My father's house. Okay? So, let's talk about the temple first. The temple, the structure itself, is made up of two. The temple has the most holy place, wherein it is only accessible once a year for the high priests, and the holy place, wherein this is only exclusively for the priests. And then we have the outside courts. Okay? We have the courts of men, and then the courts of women, and the last one is the courts of the Gentiles. As we read, the courts of the Gentiles, the outer courts, is being used for trade by these people that will be discussed now. Okay? So let's read this. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers sitting there. In the temple, meaning the courts of the Gentiles, they were selling oxen, sheep, pigeons, and money changers, because coming from different places, bringing in different monetary units. So there's only one accepted for the temple. It's a Jewish currency. So they changed that, and it is a very lucrative business for them. But what can be seen here that disturbs Jesus the most is this. Those who were selling oxen, sheep, and pigeons, these animals are intended for the animal sacrifices, the animal offerings. See, the animals for sacrifice are supposedly firstborn, chosen, and raised by the worshiper. Some of them are raised by families. and they should be without any defects. While doing the pilgrimage from their places of origin, they bring their animal sacrifices along. So somewhere along the road, somewhere during the pilgrimage, they travel. These animals may be bruised, these animals could slip, these animals could get hurt. When they get to Jerusalem at the temple, some of them are being rejected at the temple. And those who will be looking at it, the sellers and the buyers will be saying, this animal is not worthy, is not acceptable because it has some blemishes, okay? It has some defects, it has some cuts or things like that. And the poor worshippers get in there. And they don't have any other animal brought along for the sacrifices. So they are forced to sell their animals that they have raised, they have chosen, they have fed for a year before it was time for them to offer it as sacrifice. And these traders in the temple will buy them for cheap. And look at this verse 16. And he told those who sold the pigeons, take these things away, do not make my father's house a house of trade. See, a pigeon, just like Mary and Joseph, for the offering of Jesus, a pigeon is a poor man's sacrifice. For example, if they brought along a calf, and in the temple it was just paid for the worth of a pigeon, so the worshiper now is looking at the animal sacrifice that he brought along, he raised and brought along, is now just worth a pigeon. And that will be his animal sacrifice for that pilgrimage. Because it was bought so cheaply, the only animal they can buy so that they can offer a sacrifice and will not go home empty-handed is a pigeon. That's why Jesus said, take these things away and do not make my father's house a house of trade. Only to find out that as they turned, they brought along their animals that was rejected and bought cheap by those in the temple. As they turned around, they could see their animals being sold to rich Jews who are local in Jerusalem at a very dear price. The same animal that was rejected by those who are in the temple is being sold, and some other guy is going to offer it as a sacrifice. Ganun po kasama ang nangyayari dito. Kaya ang tawag ni Jesus sa ibang paraan ay, you have made my house a den of robbers. Isipin mo, pinili mo, inaruga mo, inalagaan mo, thinking that I could be offering God isang matabang baka, talagang pinatabang goya. And then ngayon, ang bitbit mo lang ay isang kalapate kasi yung goya mo sinabing hindi marapat, hindi karapat dapat i-offer na sacrifice kasi naggalusan sa pagbiyahe. Makalingon-lingon ka, ayun o, sinasacrifice, binibili na ng isang mayamang Hudyo na taga Jerusalem at ino-offer na niya ngayon o i-offer niya ngayon na burnt offering, animal sacrifice. Samantalang ikaw, ang hawak-hawak mo, isang kalapati na lang. Yun ang masamang bagay na nangyayari. So the worshippers or the pilgrims, ang pakiramdam nila, they are shortchanged, dinaya sila. They've been cheated. That is the feeling. Kasi makikita mo, ang laki-laki ng goya mo, tapos ang mai-offer mo lang ngayon, ang mabibitbit mo lang ngayon na pwede mong sunugin is kalapate. O di kaya karnero, pinatamang karnero. Tapos ngayon, kalapate. Ang layo nga naman. So these things are ang nasa likod. Kaya nga, sabi ng Panginoong Jesus, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations. Bakit all the nations? Kasi kasama dapat ang mga hentil. Pero hindi na makapunta ang mga hentil. The Gentiles could no longer be in their courts because the traders are occupying it. You have made it a den of robbers. And they are being robbed. They are being robbed of their sacrifices. They are being robbed of all of those things that they put so much effort bringing their best as an animal sacrifice for God. They are being shortchanged by these robbers in the temple. Interesting. So verse 17 says, his disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will consume me. When he made a whip and drove away those traders. This one too reminds us that this was taken from Psalm chapter 69 verse 9, wherein part of that says Jesus indeed is being rejected by his mother's children. Another proof that indeed Jesus or Mary had other children. My own mother's sons were used in 69 verse 8. Okay? So much of that. To verse 18. So the Jews said to him, what sign do you show us for doing these things? What sign, what miraculous sign do you show us driving us out of the temple, driving all of these traders out of the temple? And Jesus replied, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. The Jews said to him, it has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days? Herod's temple took 46 years and counting, because it was completed in AD 68. 2 years after that, it was destroyed by Titus the Little in AD 70. But he was speaking about the temple of his body, not the physical temple. He was saying, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. That's why he died Friday and then rose again early Sunday morning or dawn of Sunday. John chapter 2 verse 22, when therefore he was raised from the dead, flashback, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. Again, John's style of writing. Would you accept his claim, or will you reject it? And he has given us a proof. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scriptures and the word that Jesus had spoken. So, let us now consider these things for a moment. Why did John place the cleansing of the temple in the early stages of his gospel? I believe it was purposely done because after he turned water into wine, showed us an insignificant water for cleansing, no other use, to something important, life of the party, wine. Water for ceremonial cleansing, then used for the party, the life of the party. When his disciples believed in him. Now, he challenges his readers to consider this thing now. It may seem insignificant that the courts of the Gentiles, for a Jew, Why will I give the Gentiles a court? Why will I give the Gentiles part of the temple? Sounds insignificant, but for Jesus it is important because his house will be a house of prayer for all nations. That's not important. For the Jews, although they take pride with their temple, yet they have forgotten the purpose of that temple. It is for worship, a house of worship. And they made it a den of thieves and a den of robbers. I just can't help but present to you also the Synoptic Gospels presentation. Let's look at it and then we will end this lesson for this afternoon's session. When you look at Mark chapter 11 verses 1 through 11 is the triumphal entry. After that comes this. 12. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Jesus was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. He was hungry. He was looking for food. And seeing in the distance the fig tree in leaf, showing a lot of life. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves. Feel cheated. See the connections? For it was not the season for figs. And because he felt cheated, he was hungry, he was looking for food, and he got nothing, he said to it, "May no one ever eat from you again." And his disciples heard it. After that comes the cleaning or the clearing of the temple. And they came to Jerusalem. And he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. See the connections. The Synoptic Gospel writers paint a beautiful imagery. John painted that suits his purpose. The image being is this. First, let's talk about the cursing of the fig tree. Jesus being hungry, and from a distance he saw a fig tree have a lot of leaves. Yet when he comes, he found no fruit. Felt cheated. He felt shortchanged. What did he do? Cursed it. The same thing. From a distance, he could see the temple. From a distance, going up to Jerusalem, you could see pilgrimage of people going up, in throngs, going up to Jerusalem. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. They're all going to Zion. The temple is overflowing with people. And because it is overflowing with people, we all thought that they're all there for worship. But when he got there, he found out that it's not for worship. But a lot of those are trading, the buying and selling of animals, buying from poor pilgrims, cheap, selling it to rich local Jews for their animal sacrifices. The same thing. Jesus felt cheated. What will he do? Curse it. Curse it. indeed, in AD 70, that temple was destroyed by Titus the Little. Must have been said. And let's go back to John and let's end this one. So in verse 23 it says, Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people, and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. Thank you so much for being in this session again. We are now on our 20th session. And just forget the June 8th there. Have it updated that. So, let us have our 21st session by Thursday, hoping my internet connections will not find any trouble. So I'll be seeing you around by Thursday. Thank you so much again for being in this session. Please feel free to share. Again, Jose Ronnie Boy Perez Cariaga po ang inyong facilitator.